Good Erev Shabbos. Parshas Vayigash talks about the reunion with Yosef and his brothers, particularly how Yosef reveals his identity to his brothers in a shocking way. He tells them, Ani Yosef, I am Joseph, ha'od avichai. Is my father still alive? The Torah tells us, there was nobody else present when Joseph revealed his identity to his brothers. One of the famous questions on this passage is that why was Yosef saying, Ha'od avichai, is my father still alive? It was apparent from the whole dialogue before, leading up to this moment, that clearly their father was alive. Judah is saying, you got to release Binyamin for humanitarian reasons. Binyamin is so young, he's so fragile. If he's not released, it's going to have a serious detriment to our father's health. So Yosef clearly knew that Yaakov was still alive. He clearly knew that Yaakov was still alive. So why did he say Ha'od avichai? I want to share this idea that I heard. I think it's not only relevant to explaining this passage in the Torah, but it's relevant to all of our lives. And that is that many times we're in the dark about things. We're in the dark about why things are occurring, why different circumstances happen. We're confused about God's hand in our life. And the rabbis have referred to that as Hester Panim, God's concealed face. We don't need to search for too far in the past, too far in the future. As 2020 comes to a close, most are greeting the end of 2020 with a sigh of relief. But 2020 has been a dark year. It's been a dark year on many levels that needs no elaboration. But 2020 has also been a dark year in terms of faith. 2020 has been a dark year in terms of understanding God's hand in the world. 2020 has been a dark year in trying to find God's concealed face. 2020 has been what we call Hester Panim, bold, capital, underline. But as we see with the story of Yosef, who was sold as a slave as a young teen, sent to a foreign country, worked himself up until he was falsely accused of a crime, and then sentenced to a jail sentence and incarcerated for 12 years. And eventually Joseph was released from prison and catapulted to a position not only of authority, but one of the leaders of the world back then. Yosef says, how did I get to Egypt? Ha'od avichai. One of the Meforshim, the biblical commentators, explain Ha'od avichai, not as a question mark, but rather with an exclamation point. My father still lives on. And it wasn't referring to his biological father, Yaakov, who of course was alive from the dialogue leading up to this revelation. But Ha'od avichai was referring to his father in heaven, his spiritual father. And Yosef was giving commentary to this whole saga, to the whole rags to riches saga, how he was sold as a slave and went to a foreign country in a foreign culture with a foreign language, and was sold not only as a slave, but was incarcerated in prison, and he went through and evolved through so many different stages till he got to this position of power. And he declared with great understanding, Ha'od avichai, that my father still lives on. And I think this should give us great comfort as we struggle with our emunah, with our faith. And many times, God's hand is not as apparent as we would like it to be. And we have a lack of understanding and we have confusion, as we did this past year. We have to take heart from the Torah, in this case, our weekly parsha, the story of Yosef. That many times, even though it seems dark, even though we don't see God's face, what we should realize that his face is just concealed. It's not disappeared. And just like Joseph, just like Yosef, hopefully soon, we'll be able to say proudly and with a loud voice, Ha'od Avichai, my Father still lives on, because we'll be able to understand God's hand in our world. And we'll be able to say that with great confidence, understanding, and appreciation of God in our world. I wish you all a good Erev Shabbos.